jump into our question and answer period. Okay, so the first question is for Ricky, David, and Gilda, in that order. And here is the first question. The Board of Commissioners have not raised taxes in 8 years, and some are noticing a decline in certain types of infrastructure, such as the conditions of our roads and public parks. What are your views on the current state of our infrastructure and its relationship to current tax rates? Ricky, when you're ready.
Well, I first want to say, I want to commend the board for having that track record, for having 8 years without a tax increase. My view of our current infrastructure is that there's too much traffic. I mean, I think everybody knows that. And we need to figure out ways to deal with it. One of the ways that the commissioners have found to deal with it is by imposing a fee upon developers to pay for the studies or pay for improvements near the development. I don't think it's enough, and I think there's been some discussion about how to raise it. And I think it should be raised significantly enough where it makes a difference. So that's one of the ideas that I have about improving our infrastructure. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
David, when you're ready.
Like Ricky, I would commend the commissioners. 8 years without a tax increase is pretty impressive. Unfortunately, we're running a deficit. The 2019 budget is $68 million. We're going to have a projected revenue of 64, which means we're borrowing from the general fund, doing a drawdown to pay for the deficit. So obviously, we have limited resources. You can't continue to draw down, which sort of brings me back to the need to, spur more commercial development on Ballot Avenue and City Avenue. So that's a source of gaining revenue. I think it's a very, very important source. In terms of the infrastructure, the traffic, traffic's annoying. We're all annoyed by traffic, but the traffic studies repeatedly show it's organic. It doesn't emanate from here. It's not as if people are driving down City Avenue to go to the Sleepy's, bed store or the defunct Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's people commuting from Delaware County. It's a state highway. We have very limited ability to police that. So traffic's an issue. I think the Special Services District and the Commissioners, Commissioner Manos, have done a good job in terms of synchronizing, working with the Special Services District to improve traffic flow at City Avenue.
Thank you, David. Okay, next, Gilda.
The township's finances are very strong. We have significant reserves.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Township's finances are strong. We have significant reserves. We have a double AAA bond rating because of the strong fiscal management for the township. We have an excellent staff, and the commissioners have been very good about maintaining no tax increases for 8 years. We do need to invest more in our infrastructure. Some of it is required. For example, in the stormwater area, we are required to put more investments into stormwater management. In order to address that, I think we need to look and try to pursue having stormwater impact fees. Exactly how this is going to be done, it's going to have to be, looked at. We're going to need to either need to raise at some point in time real estate taxes or explore other sources of income, which could include an earned income tax, greater enforcement with business privilege tax, although the township is very good with that, and again, attracting more businesses to our community.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so our next question, we'll start with David. This question will be for David, Gilda, and Mike. What are your views on the revitalization and redevelopment of the City Line Avenue corridor? Do you support the current path, or do you think there should be an alternative?
I frankly don't think there is an alternative. It is such a huge contributor, $20 million in contribution to the school district taxes. I mean, somebody's going to have to pay that bill, and if it's not coming from City Avenue, if we're not expanding City Avenue as a revenue source, then we have an issue. Then our taxes will go up, or our school taxes will go up significantly. So yes, I think we need to expand that. I think That's why I think the race in Ward 9 is so significant right now, because I think Ward 9 is really an economic engine for the entire township, and the issues that it has really affect the township in significant ways. So that's why it's so important to keep City Avenue on the path, and there's a lot of work ahead in terms of the updated zoning and sort of fine tuning it to get the most bang for the buck while minimizing sort of the outlay and the burden on our schools and resources. Thanks.
Thank you. Gilda.
City Avenue is important both for the township's finances because it has historically provided at least 10% of our tax base. And it's also important in terms of the amenities that it provides for the people who live in Ballackinwood. This area was very much in decline for a number of years with increasing vacancy rates and lowering assessments. And some years ago, after extensive thought, there was a plan developed with the City Avenue ordinance to revitalize the area because it is an outdated, unattractive business district, the way it is with large buildings and gigantic parking lots around it. The concept behind the City Avenue ordinance is to turn it into a walkable, mixed-use community. And I think that City Avenue does need to be reimagined. It has to be done without more apartment buildings going in right now because we have more than we expected, but we do need to revitalize it.
Thank you.
So, I agree with a lot of what has been said in terms of the fact that the City Avenue community, the City Avenue district, obviously an important economic engine for our township, certainly needs, at the very least, a facelift, and frankly, it needs new investment. The question is really, are we going to expand dramatically the square footage, the number of apartments, the amount of retail? Are we going to encourage the property owners, the real estate companies that manage those properties to invest in their existing infrastructure and their existing properties? I think that there definitely is room for improvement, but I don't think that the answer is to stick 1,100 apartments on St. Asaph's Road, another 300 apartments along City Line Avenue, additional tower on top of the Ballackinwood Shopping Center. We should be working with the landlords, the property owners, to make the community more walkable, add infrastructure, but I would 100% agree. The answer is to improve what we have, not start building 10 and 12-story buildings all along City Avenue.
Thank you very much. All right, our next question begins with Gilda. It's for Gilda and Mike. And the question is, how will you work with the school board, specifically around increasing enrollment? Please give us concrete examples. Yes.
Well, I'm pleased that we are starting to really work, the commission and the school board are really trying to work together more. And I know that there are task forces and meetings that are taking place currently between the school board and the commissioners. I think we need to continue to do that. We need to continue to work with them to do joint planning and in order to take care of the needs of our schools as well as the needs of our community.
Thank you.
So I agree that there needs to be more joint planning. Very interestingly enough, there was recently a proposal to work with our private schools and institutions and ask for a multi-year plan ahead of time so that we could understand what their expectations were for their use, their property, the amount of people they were going to have on their campuses. And I think that we should be asking the same thing of our school district. My major concern about the school district is two things. First of all, if we raise taxes dramatically in this township, we know that that leads seniors to sell their houses. Seniors sell their houses, a new young family moves in, now we have more kids in our school district, and we might be going backwards. The other issue that I'm concerned about is that our new school is going to open, but every year we're adding dozens, hundreds of kids to our school district, and I think we're going to still have an overcrowding problem even after this new school opens. And so I think we need to be planning ahead because frankly, if we continue on this path, we're going to need another school in addition to the school that we have. I've got trailers on the field between Ballackinwood and Kinwood Elementary School And I don't see an end in sight. We have to get ahead of this problem.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, hang on to that mic because the next question begins with Mike. And this one is for Mike and then Fred. The question, affordable rental and home ownership opportunities have been diminished in part due to developers that have consolidated properties and constructed new, higher-priced rentals and homes. Do you have ideas on how to improve affordable housing opportunities in Lower Merion and/or Narberth Borough?
So you're going to be accused of sending me a softball. I am the president of our township's Affordable Housing Corporation. I could talk for hours about ways that we could be doing this.
So you have 2 minutes.
So obviously some of this is going to be accomplished in our new zoning code, and I think that this is one of the places where I don't agree with everything that's in there necessarily in terms of density. If we could be incorporating more opportunities for affordable housing, and affordable housing in all of our neighborhoods. You know, everybody should have affordable housing in their community because people who live in affordable housing deserve to live in this community just as much as anyone else. We have some great programs. There's room for more funding. There is a dedicated funding source that is accruing at the township, and we need to have a community-wide plan to invest in community housing, and affordable housing, and workforce housing for our township employees and the nurses and the school district folks. We need that in every neighborhood in the township, and I hope that we can accomplish that through our zoning code.
Thank you. Fred.
Well, I have a personal response to this question. So my mother is a Cuban refugee, and I've had numerous family members come and stay with us as they enter the United States. And I have an uncle and aunt who the only way they were able to get a house was to win a housing lottery and access a low-income house that would not have been possible for them otherwise. So I'm very sympathetic to this. I think that the Borough of Narberth can work to ensure that there's more Section 8 housing available within the borough, and I look forward to an opportunity to provide housing opportunity for those who don't have it. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. All right, the next question begins with Fred, and it's for Fred and Mona. Describe a recent Narberth Council decision that you did or did not agree with.
Well, so obviously I'm excited about the plastics ordinance. This is something that I strongly supported as a member of Narberth 150, and that I helped Borough Council and Borough staff. I helped it reach its final form by working with Borough Council and Borough staff. And I'm proud of it because it is the borough doing something new in Pennsylvania and doing something that's groundwork for future legislation. I think that it's a great start in addressing a problem of waste that we all see everywhere we go, we all have it. And I think once we see it working, it hasn't gone into full effect yet, but once it goes into effect and once we see its operation, that'll provide us with a framework for future legislation along those lines.
Thank you.
I also supported the plastic ordinance fully. I think, we're living in a time when we have a president who is a climate change denier, who censors and undermines scientists, and who is moving us backward on the environment. So I think it's really important to remember that even in a time like this, we can move forward and be an example for others to follow. So the plastic ordinance, I think, is a great example. We need to be concerned about the plastic pollution in our creeks and in our rivers. I would also say that I really support the bike infrastructure is what I really want to talk about. We need to be figuring out ways that we can be creative to reduce climate change. And with the bike infrastructure, you are helping public citizens to reduce their own carbon footprint if we create a bike-friendly community. And it would only cost $2,500 in extra spending to the borough, and we get an extra watering station out of it. Sorry, I could go on and on, but
Thank you. Okay, the next question actually begins again with Fred. This is for Fred, Mona, and Robert. The question is, the new form-based zoning code has been in place in Narberth for 3 years. Please describe what you see as some of the successes and some of the challenges resulting from this code.
Well, it's really obvious to see the effect that the form-based zoning code has had. There has been no downtown development in Narberth for decades, and now there are multiple projects that are in various stages of completion. I think it's great that we have more, we're going to have more people in the downtown area and near public transit, near our shops. Every time I talk to business owners or hear what they have to say, they're all in favor of new development. There are some issues with the look of one of the new apartment buildings. I think people saw it and had a visceral reaction that this is not Narberth, this is not what we need to see. And I know that council has been working on tweaking the form-based zoning code to make sure that any future construction is more fitting, it looks like Narberth basically. So I'm hopeful that that will satisfy a lot of the objections to development.
Thank you. Mona?
So I really want to commend council for giving us one of the first form-based zoning codes in the state. I think it's a fantastic way to help preserve the character of Narberth, the traditional small-town neighborhood character. Yes, there are some issues. There have been some complaints about the 4-story building on Forest, and I think that, for me, I think the jury is still out. I'd like to see what happens with the new building to decide whether maybe we go back to 3 stories eventually. But I think in general, the form-based zoning, from talking with someone at the Lower Merion Conservancy to figure out how we can preserve our neighborhoods, not every neighborhood is able to use structures put in place by Lower Merion Conservancy, so we have to think about other ways to preserve the character. And I think the form-based zoning code is one good way to do that. I would like to see more greener requirements put into the zoning code, and I think that would be really helpful.
Thank you very much. Robert?
So we were transit in Narberth. We were transit-oriented development before that term was even coined. I think the form-based zoning code is very much in keeping with the settlement pattern that was established in the 1890s. It's concentrating folks close to the train, and that allows for the 4th story on Windsor Ave. As part of the planning, the Building and Zoning Committee with Bob Weisford, we had a question on 4 stories on Hartford Avenue, and we eventually decided not to do 4 stories on Hartford Avenue in response to community input, and instead favored 4 stories on Windsor Avenue. So that was a compromise that I was happy with because it still concentrates people close to the train.
Thank you. Okay, the next question begins with Mona, and this is for Mona, Robert, and Bob. The question is, what do you think are the 3 most pressing issues facing Narberth right now?
So for me, if I were to pick, a couple of priorities, I would have to say my first priority would be strengthening our community. For me, that's where everything starts, is with community. So I think that we could do that in 2 ways. 1, with the zoning code, which we just talked about. 2, with listening to each other. So it's really important to me to listen to residents, to meet my neighbors, and to find out what matters to each other. Because to build a strong community, we have to be able to work together and find common ground. Everybody I talk to has different priorities for Narberth. No matter who you talk to, they're going to say something else is the first priority we need to spend our money on. So for me, that's the fabric of building a strong community. Another priority, running out of time, budget. Strong communities require healthy budgets, and I take people's taxpayer dollars very seriously. We need to manage them well. The council in recent years has done a fantastic job of improving budget planning, but we still need to increase more reserves in our general fund, our capital improvement fund, and our pensions. And the third would be environmental sustainability, which I'm out of time, so I'll
Thank you. Okay, Robert.
So So I would say a climate action plan that I think we could put in place within the next year or two. And that could start with the municipal-owned properties, this building, the library, 201 Sabine, to reduce carbon emissions. And then we could move beyond borough-owned property to the borough as a whole. And this could be done through the Ready for 100 Sierra Club resolution that our other neighboring communities have already adopted. We could also, I think, do more on infrastructure, and the staff is really helping us with the Complete Streets pilot program on Windsor. And so we have an opportunity to shape what that street looks like in terms of bikes, cars, pedestrians, in a comprehensive way, and then hopefully replicate that throughout the borough.
I'd just like to offer you a contrast. The borough of Narberth has 1,700 homes. 1,700 homes. The borough of Narberth has 3,500 residents. And the borough of Narberth has 7 representatives on borough council. So this is just to contrast scale of government in Lower Merion and Narberth. And I especially appreciate our opportunity to be represented in this panel with those of you who I know will each represent yourselves over 5,000 people and more than that number of homes. So I just want to acknowledge that that's going on here in this conversation. Also, I'd say for Narberth, our chief challenge is capital improvement, the maintenance and improvement and repair of what we have as a borough. This building, our playgrounds, our property at 201 Sabine Avenue. We have accrued over 30 years of deferred maintenance. We just recently reorganized our management structure. We've hired a completely new police department, but we have parks and playgrounds that are in dire need of upkeep and maintenance, and I believe that we are on the dawn of doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, we have a very strong library, very strong
Okay.
fire department.
Thank you.
Good-
All right.
good
Fire
job.
department.
Okay. All right, so we're going to start the next question with Robert, Bob, and then back up to Ricky, okay? So the question is, what role do you think the Board of Commissioners and Borough Council can play in improving our environmental footprint? Robert.
So I would say
Oh, excuse me.
for the Robert.
Yeah, it's Robert.
Okay. We're both technical.
You're next, Bob.
So, in terms of environmental footprint,
Yes.
so there's a lot we can do, and I think one of the challenges we face in Narberth is many of our residents don't have driveways. So when we look ahead to the transition to electric vehicles, we have a special challenge in Narberth. We've got to figure it out because it's kind of a chicken or egg scenario, and unless our neighbors have access to a charging station at the street, then they will not purchase an electric vehicle. And so we need to make that a possibility for neighbors without driveways. And that's going to be a long-term project. I think we'll have to look to places like Cambridge and Philadelphia for solutions.
That's all good stuff. The Borough of Narberth within the next year or two will be replacing all of our overhead streetlights with LED lights. It's going to save us over $1 million in the coming 10 years. We will be encouraging the residents to use solar power. We're working with the Wilmington Conservancy to educate residents on how to recharge their stormwater from their gutters and roads into the property on site rather than delivering to the face of curb and have it run down into the North Branch of Indian Creek. We have major need to upgrade our sewage and stormwater management within the borough. That's going to make an enormous difference as we come into compliance with the federal guidelines around stormwater management. I think finally, we now have the political will in Narberth, and I think represented by these 3 candidates, to make the right decisions around sustainability and our future. And I was proud to have introduced sponsored the creation of the Environmental Advisory Council, which is busy. Sorry,
I actually have 3 ideas to address that issue. One, we can give commercial developers incentives for putting in things like green roofs. We give them incentives whenever they build new projects. The other idea is, I go through the neighborhood, and every house I see has gutters that go right into the ground, into our sewer system. And I don't know why that is. They should be going right into the lot and have the water dissipate onto the lot. So we could do something about that right now. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that we have a request for funding to get a consultant for a lighting ordinance. The commissioners could do that right now, approve the funding, have somebody draft a lighting ordinance, and so that we can move into the 21st century as far as what we're using and what's energy efficient. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is for Ricky and David. How would you assess the impact of current and approved development? And how would that analysis impact your decision-making with, I'm sorry, it's Bob, then Ricky, then David. Forgive me. So Bob, Ricky, David. How would you assess the impact of current and approved development? And how would that analysis impact your decision-making with regard to future development moving forward?
I was appointed to the Narberth Planning Commission in 2006 and served there until I joined council in 2011. We were very concerned about the impact of what was happening all around us in Montgomery County, the overbuild. And at that time, the Planning Commission proposed a form-based code for Narberth, which was about 2 years ago, that limits the growth of Narberth. It actually caps it at the same of the code that it replaced, but it additionally incentivized the adaptive reuse of historical and civic institutional buildings, as well as actually deterring developers from tearing down homes that we have within our neighborhoods and replacing them with new development, as is happening around the area. We did that through scale and through design within the ordinance. What's going to happen in Narberth in the next years is growth on the same border, at the same size, limited in the same way as the former code in size, but will be designed in a way that's in keeping with the community.
Thank you, Al.
So, a number of years ago, we had an issue where we wanted to support the commercial development in City Avenue, and the ordinance was written to promote that, and the envelope was open to do that. We've seen the effects of it over the last 4 or 5 years, and I think we should close the spigot. We have a unique opportunity right now, when we're drafting the new ordinance, to take our leverage back. We should, and we should give more discretion to commissioners when a project comes before you to not have to say, my hands are tied. I want to be able to say, I want this in exchange for that. I want our leverage back. And that's how I would change things as a commissioner. And the things that I'm doing now, involved in the civic, is reviewing the zoning code to make sure that we have that leverage. Thank you.
Thanks. I think in 2012, when the zoning was changed for the City Avenue area, it was contemplated by everybody, the commissioners, township staff, that it would be an equal mix of development of commercial and residential. And for various reasons, a lot of them have to do with market forces and just the way development has progressed. It got fairly wildly skewed in favor of apartment buildings and residential. And I think the township's now in the process of correcting that. And I think the December 19th commissioners meeting, some adjustments were made. I think it's important to keep in mind, though, that we're not writing on a blank slate, that we have the benefit of a very comprehensive 2016 comprehensive plan, which sort of dictates where we should be, and it's well thought out. It talks about walkability and traffic and greeting and those things. So I think it's a question of fine tuning it to get the balance back in favor of commercial away from residential. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next 2 questions are pairs of 2. This one is for Ricky and David. With regard to the proposed update to the Lower Merion zoning code, what are your thoughts about the process employed and the timelines? And what do you think the plan should accomplish? Would you change anything?
So I believe the plan is currently to update, or to approve the ordinance in July of this year. I don't have a problem with that because I think Mr. Bernheim is right. You could run into an analysis paralysis situation. I know that there's meetings happening now about the township, but the problem I have with the process is that there's not a lot of universal communication about the comments that are being given to the township about the code. There's a lot of questions about it. I know in the Federation, people have read it. There are a lot of open issues that still need to be answered. And having a meeting while those issues are still open may not be as effective as being able to flesh those out and have a real discussion about it. So that's my only criticism of the process. I think the township's doing the right thing and trying to get input from everybody around the township. And I agree with the timeline that it's on. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have a wildly different view. I think the process is in place, the process should be followed, and I think I'd agree with Ricky that communication is key. I think we have a tendency to be complacent and sort of let the system play out, but I think what happens is if you're not heard, if you're not listened to, then there's dissatisfaction. So if you have a perspective, then show up, make your voice be heard, let your commissioners know what you want. But don't kind of sit back and then grumble when you're dissatisfied with the process, because there is a process in place. And as far as I can tell, the process is being followed. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the next question is for Gilda and Mike. Gilda first. Recently, 50 residents and the Lower Merion commissioners engaged in implicit bias training with the Anti-Defamation League. What do you see as the next steps to continue to help build trust between residents of color, the township, and the Lower Merion Police?
Well, that's an interesting question. Obviously, the issue of race is one that is below the surface here in this community. I think that it is something that needs to be talked about, needs to be openly discussed, and obviously implicit bias training is important, and having an open dialogue between the communities of color, and the police and the rest of the community is important. And so I think that we just have to keep an open dialogue.
So I would agree, this is an extremely important issue that we face here in the township, and frankly, we face across our country. In my work in the Affordable Housing Corporation and in our community, making sure that Lower Merion can be a home for everyone has been one of the most important things that I have focused on. And that's people of different racial backgrounds, people of different religious backgrounds, people of different income backgrounds, people from the disability community, people who are older and need a quality place to live where they can access services. And so I've been working on this issue for quite a long time. I think that one of the most important things on this is for all of us, and especially the people in government and seeking a position in government, to be listening and to be open and accessible and to be comfortable hearing things that may make us uncomfortable. We all have an obligation in leadership, and frankly, all of us in our community, to make sure that the people who raise these issues are heard, and to make sure that people who are afraid to raise these issues or otherwise intimidated about raising these issues have a voice. And I intend to be a voice for everybody in the 13th Ward and across this township.
Thank you. Okay. All right, the next two questions are sets of two. The first one's for Mona and Fred. Narberth is starting to see new commercial development for the first time in almost 40 years. What are some of the opportunities and some of the challenges associated with this new development?
So, new development can be great for us in terms of helping us to have a healthy budget, bringing in new taxes. A lot of residents have concerns about increased problems with parking, with traffic, with construction. So I think, one thing that's really important is, again, to figure out how we can use the zoning code to alleviate some of those problems. There's been talk, and I hope that council will move forward with this in terms of implementing new regulations where large new developments would be, new residents would not be permitted to have on-street parking, and large new developments would be required to have all on-site parking. And so I think with smart use of the zoning code, we could address some of those issues.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, I think the big concern that everyone talks about is parking, is concerns about parking. The borough did a parking study 2 years ago, hired consultants to do a parking study. Their conclusion was that the downtown area in particular had plenty of parking, but they identified some measures for increasing the permit fees and making it easier on some streets that had a localized parking problem. I think Borough Council needs to get in front of this and say, look, we've studied this issue. There are parking spaces available, and we are going to work to enhance pedestrian and bike infrastructure downtown to ease the flow of traffic. If more people are walking and biking downtown, fewer people will be parking down there. And there's plenty of spaces for bike parking. All of the county and all the bike studies that have been done all indicate that downtown is a key area for bike parking. And I think fixing the sidewalks will also help.
Thank you. This next question, before we have our question for the whole panel, is for Robert and Bob. Question is, what do you see as the relationship between the Borough Council and the school district? How can you support one another?
So I think in Borough Council, we recognize among the seven of us the complexities of governing our small borough. And so I think we can also appreciate the complexities that the school board is facing. And so, Narberth contributes, because of our size, we would be contributing a very small number of new apartments, say. So, it's a much smaller scale when it comes to the question of enrollment, or the larger enrollment challenge that the district is facing. But I think the Borough Council can partner with the council. I'm interested to know more about how the Marion commissioners are partnering with the school board, and perhaps that's something that the Borough Council could do as well.
Thank you. Bob?
I cannot think of a more important body than the school board, or the school district's mission of educating our children. I think it's really is the best asset that all of us share within the borough of Narberth, and within Marion Township is the quality public education that we have for our children. I believe that our borough council would be willing to cooperate with the school board in any way we could, if asked. I think I don't know, I can't quite imagine how we do that other than, we would offer land for a new school, I believe. I think that's always something that Narberth is willing to do. I don't know that there's any open land available. So I'm not sure what to say. I can say that within our new zoning code, there's a cap to the amount of growth that can go on in Narberth. There really isn't any open space to develop brand new. There's not, the apartment buildings, my time's up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right, so, beginning with Ricky, this question is for everyone on the panel. And the question is this: what new ideas will you bring for Lower Marion or Narberth?
I have a couple. The first thing is every time there's a development that happens in our township, there's a traffic study done. There's no standardization to that process. Developers can sometimes do it on a Friday when school's out of session, and all it does is it wastes everybody's time. You know, we as a civic have a comment about it, they try to do it again, they try to accommodate it, we have to update our traffic studies to have a more realistic view of what the traffic is on City Line, for instance. So that would be one thing, is to standardize traffic studies. The other idea I have is actually to address the enrollment growth. I think that we as commissioners can do something, and that is to incentivize seniors to age in place. And the way that we would do that is by either offering a tax rebate for those that qualify and have been in the township for 5 or 10 years, or a tax deferment where it's still incurred, but they pay it whenever they sell the house. And that way we can at least deal with the major contributing factor to enrollment growth, which is the emptying of houses of seniors and new families coming in. So those are a couple of new ideas that I have.
David?
Thanks. One of the things I think we can do more of is, but I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I started out as an assistant U.S. attorney. I worked in-house at Campbell Soup, and now I'm in private practice. And one of the things I learned at Campbell Soup, they're having a hard time selling any more soup, but they are good in their business practices, and one of them is benchmarking, which means you find out what similarly situated companies are doing. And I think we could do more of that in Lower Merion in terms of looking at other first-ring communities to see what they're doing, because a lot of these are issues that face communities across the country. Even within our own community, one of the areas that I think is successful is Bryn Mawr. I think if you look at the Bryn Mawr Film Institute, that has completely revitalized that stretch of Lancaster Avenue. There are tons of restaurants and shopping. It's walkable. They have great pedestrian safety. They have those flashing lights. That's something that works. I mean, if we could encourage the Bryn Mawr Film Institute to come to Val Avenue, get involved in the movie theater or something, that could be the boost that we need. So it's benchmarking. It's looking what works, looking at other communities, and looking at fresh ideas.
2 minutes?
Yes, you do.
Not 10? I need 15. Climate change is one of the most critical issues facing us. And on environmental issues, I've already been working with Brian McGuire and other commissioners on the issue of creating electric vehicle infrastructure in our township. We need to transition our fleet to electric, natural gas, and propane. This has already been studied, it hasn't been implemented yet. We should be incentivizing use of solar and creating solar gardens here. We need to improve recycling in our township, especially in our buildings, because the apartment buildings are not recycling right now. We need to do more to encourage public transit by expanding service on the Kinwood line and also improving parking near our train stations. In the area of social services, we need to assess the little discussed issue of hunger in the township and determine how to address it with SNAP being contracted. There's no excuse for hunger in Lower Merion Township, which affects both seniors and families. We need to increase support for organizations that are addressing that issue and consider creating food gardens where people in need can go and harvest food during the summertime. I agree with Mike that affordable housing is an issue. And this is especially for workforce like volunteer firefighters and police and teachers. We ought to be looking at taking the fees that we receive from builders in lieu of affordable housing and using them to subsidize appropriate housing for our workforce. And so these are some of my ideas. I could go on. I have a bunch of other thoughts about it, but for starters, these are the types of things that we should be studying. We should be looking also at what Narberth has done with plastic bags. I know that's been referred out to the Environmental Advisory Council, along with the idea of the electric vehicle infrastructure, which I had researched and provided significant information to Brian about. So those are some of my ideas.
Thank you very much. Mike.
So obviously we've heard a lot of great ideas, and I think that every single one of them should be discussed and potentially implemented. If I could add something new to the conversation, here's what I would suggest. I would draw a circle around every school, every park, and every business district in this township, and I would draw a half-mile radius, and I would work on infilling the sidewalks, the bike lanes, and the opportunities for people to walk to our schools. We're going to build a new school in a highly unwalkable area. We should be investing in sidewalk infrastructure. We should be investing in bike trails. We should be investing in bike trails that connect to our existing bike trails. We have all these little pieces of infrastructure that are scattered all over the township. And I think that if we worked in a more focused way to connect them, bring people so that they're able to walk safely along Montgomery Avenue into a business district, whether that business district is Bala Kingwood and Marion, whether that business district is Ardmore, even if that business district is Narberth. I know what the sidewalk on the Narberth side of the Montgomery Avenue looks like, and it's not great. So I think that as we talk about prioritizing our resources, there's a lot of things we can do. Environmental things are important. Things that go to our budget and go to our efficiency are obviously important. I think that one of the best things we can do is get people out of their cars and walking or biking to our schools, to our parks, to our existing infrastructure, to our business districts. And it'll also help save our business districts if people can get to them. So that's one of the things that I would propose.
Okay, thank you. Fred?
I think the borough should consider adopting a version of the Green Points development program that the borough of Doylestown and the borough of Swarthmore are using. It's a program where new construction new buildings can get a partial rebate of their building permit fee if they do certain sustainable construction techniques or if they're more energy efficient. We're limited in what we can do to change building codes because of Pennsylvania state law. So we really can only provide carrots, and I think that's a pretty good carrot. And it's also been tested out by, Swarthmore and Doylestown, so we have evidence that this is a working program. And on a completely different note, I think that the borough has a communications problem right now. I think it's very hard for ordinary citizens to reach out to people in the borough and get an answer about laws or about just regulations about just about anything. I mean, I see a lot of posts on Facebook or people saying, oh, let's ask the mayor on Facebook. And that's not really a sustainable way to get information about borough policies. So I think the borough needs some sort of, whether it's a Twitter feed, whether it's an official Facebook feed, needs some sort of official way for people to contact the borough online directly and expect an official response. Because right now that's lacking. And as a result, we get a lot of people upset about borough decisions and confused about borough decisions. Like people just aren't sure what's going on with the construction. I heard somebody saying that we're going to get like 6-story buildings or 8-story buildings, which is right out. But they don't have an easy way to get information and to get an authoritative answer. So I would like to see the borough adopt more modern social media technique of reaching people.
Thank you, Nancy.
So you've heard me talk a lot about community, a lot about listening. I think public-private efforts can be really valuable to generate a lot of new ideas. So for example, thinking about our stormwater remediation, I think in Narberth we've been required by the state to explain how we're going to reduce the pollution that we are from our stormwater that's going into our creeks and rivers. I think that's going to take a big public-private effort. We're going to have to recruit a lot of volunteers. We could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that just by the borough, and people will be upset and angry with where we're doing things, but if we recruit a large-scale volunteer effort, we can get private citizens to install rain gardens and rain barrels on private property. We can optimize our street cleaning plan and get volunteers involved in that. I've heard a lot of Narberth people talk about the need for a community center and community gardens, but obviously that has to be, a lot of that has to be a private effort. So I think really the good ideas to me really come from building community and getting as many ideas in a space as you can and keeping that commitment to working together. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like to focus on 3 areas. The environment, as I've spoken about, and one piece of that would be fine-tuning how the council works with the Environmental Advisory Council that's newly established. And I think we can model that on our planning commission that has worked so well for so many years. way that they have sent routinely to council very well thought out statements on policy that inform the council. I think the council is ready to move on the environment, but we need the guidance of the EAC, and that body may need to be expanded because there's so much work to do. Another area I'd like to focus on is infrastructure upgrades. And so I mentioned the EV charging stations, but sidewalks would be another area. There's bike infrastructure that we're kind of beginning to work on with the grant project the staff is working on. The third area would be renewing our community spaces, and this would include not just this building, but also 201 Sabine, which is a property that the council has been wrestling with. We need to figure out 201 Sabine and what the future of that property will be. And I'd like to see us do that within the next couple of years, sooner rather than later, so that we're making wise investments in maintaining that property. And the other area I would love to invest in is Station Circle. I would love to see that become a green space. And over the last 6 months, we've had a group of landscape architect students design possibilities for that space. And it could be a park that bridges the south side and the north side and helps to reinvigorate the business district.
Thank you.
Narberth has an extraordinary number of volunteers already engaged in government. We have the full complement of boards and commissions, just like ordinary, including Environmental Advisory Board. We also have 2 strategic teams now, one working on a new comprehensive plan. We have one group of people working with the Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission to inventory all of the historic buildings in Narberth. And they're feeding their findings directly into our comprehensive plan as well. Making use of all of the volunteers that we currently have in Narberth on our Planning Commission, on our Shade Tree Commission, on our Recreation Board, our Civil Service Commission, you know all of these, you know all of them. This is I think almost 50 people who are currently engaged. They're really good, committed people. And what we need to do in Narberth with the Borough Council is really codify or build a culture of listening and working directly with those commissions, so the council becomes most responsive to their recommendations.
Okay, thank you. That was our question and answer period. So we're going to move into closing statements.